everyone, it's Stephanie Behring, Miss Central California 2017, and this is my official vlog post for the Miss California website. Each of the contestants were asked to do either a vlog or a blog post that describes a little bit more about themselves, their platform, their hometown, or something about their title that makes them unique. So my vlog is actually about my personal platform, the Wheelchair Foundation Wheels That Heal. I interviewed my father, who is the president of the Wheelchair Foundation, which is included a little bit later in this video, and I wanted to ask him a little bit more about his work as the president of the Wheelchair Foundation, how my grandfather started the Wheelchair Foundation, and a little bit of more insight about what it means to be the president so that all of you guys watching can know a little bit more about my platform.
The Wheelchair Foundation is the largest nonprofit organization in the world that distributes wheelchairs. And to date, we've done about 1,060,000 wheelchairs in 156 countries. Normally, a nonprofit gets started because somebody has a direct connection. For example, if you're going to fight a disease, a member of the family might have been afflicted with that disease. In the event of a paralysis, maybe somebody was in an accident, and so the family or the community threw its weight behind some type of a new nonprofit to help in that regard. In our case, our family was very healthy. Nobody ever needed a wheelchair, and it happened quite by accident. My father happened to be going to different countries back in the 1980s and 90s, and he was asked by the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, to take along some canned meats to a country that he was going to in Kosovo, and also bring wheelchairs, walkers, and crutches that they had in their warehouse. And then they said, why don't you stay with us, Mr. Behring, and take a look at what we're doing. So he decided to watch, and he was very moved by the fact that these people had their lives changed instantaneously by a wheelchair. The people couldn't walk, they had to be carried, and suddenly, when the Mormons gave them a wheelchair, they were able to move by themselves, their family could push them, and they no longer had that huge problem of being immobile. And he was just very affected and impressed. And he said, you know, there's a need for this. Countries aren't doing it. The governments don't have money, especially in the third world countries. So he decided to start a foundation. And the foundation was begun in 2000, and his goal was to do 1 million wheelchairs in 5 years. And it took about 15 years, but we finally got to 1 million. And everybody thought that he was crazy when he made that comment, that nobody had ever come anywhere close to delivering that number of wheelchairs. The average organization at that time might have been doing 200, 300, 400 wheelchairs a year. He suddenly was doing up to 80,000 wheelchairs a year. So it was pretty phenomenal. I've had a lot of incredible ones, but there's two that have left indelible impressions in my mind. The first one, I was with my Princeton class. We do an alumni, every 5 years we have an alumni distribution for my class. We raise money and we pick a country. This year we're going to Peru, and this trip actually was Guatemala that I'm going to refer to. So we had about 25 classmates that went down to Guatemala. We're with the First Lady at the Presidential Palace. We're giving out about 100 wheelchairs. We have a number of dignitaries, including the First Lady. And as we were giving out the wheelchairs, everybody got the wheelchair in front of the First Lady. This man comes up and he said, my daughter got paralyzed in a car accident. We were walking on the side of the road and a drunk truck driver slammed into my family. 3 of my family members and my wife were killed. My daughter was tossed 50 feet and she became paralyzed. So she hasn't walked in 2 years. And he said she's been just dreaming about getting a wheelchair because we have to carry her everywhere. So this beautiful little girl, and I mean truly beautiful, with just these angelic eyes and the most beautiful smile. She comes out in this little white dress, and we put her in a wheelchair. She had never been in a wheelchair. She didn't know what to do. And so one of my friends went up and showed her how to start turning the wheels by herself. And so she was in front of the First Lady, and she started to move the wheelchair, and all of a sudden she went 5 feet, 10 feet, and she just radiated a smile. And she started going around, and everybody in the room was just clapping. And many of the people were crying. And the father was crying. And he's watching his daughter after this tragic accident, suddenly she's pushing herself in a wheelchair. And the First Lady came over and hugged her. That meant everything to the people in the room. I mean, just loud applause, and everybody was hugging each other. So I always think of that moment. A second experience was about 5 years ago, and we've raised wheelchairs for Vietnam. I'm too young to be a Vietnam vet, but I have many friends that fought in Vietnam, and they were nervous about going back to Vietnam to distribute wheelchairs. And I'd already been there twice before the Vietnam vets. And I told them, I said, listen, we're going to visit orphanages, we're going to be giving out wheelchairs to people that are landmine victims 60 years after the war. And so we got a group of about 20 Vietnam vets to go over there. And a lot of these guys were apprehensive. They didn't know what was going to happen when they saw this country that had so many terrible memories and horrors for them when they fought there. And the first time we gave out wheelchairs to people that lost their legs to landmines, it was a very powerful sense of almost closure, doing a 360, because these landmines were left over from the war. And a woman had gone out in her backyard 60 years after the war, and she was farming, and she hit a landmine. The landmine blew off her leg. So two of these Vietnam vets picked this woman up, and they set her into a wheelchair. And you could just see the expression on their face. And then there was a couple children that were born to Agent Orange. Their parents had Agent Orange, or they had been affected by it, and now the kids had Agent Orange. So they had severe disabilities. And we gave out wheelchairs to probably 30 victims of Agent Orange. We dropped the Agent Orange during the war. Many of our men are suffering from cancers and ill effects, and they've had problems with some of their kids, all because of the just awful effects of Agent Orange. So now they're helping these children over there. We go to an orphanage where a lot of these kids had lost their parents. And when these Vietnam vets went and picked up the kids and played with them, you could just see that it's a feeling of catharsis where they're expunging these terrible, evil memories, terrible, demons in the back of their mind. And now they're helping the people of this country that they fought so hard for at one time, and then they had to fight the enemy in North Vietnam. So every vet that came back and their spouse said, that changed my husband. He's better for it now. He's calmer. He talks about Vietnam in a positive way rather than a negative way. And they want to continue to help Vietnam, so we're going to start doing another series of fundraisers this year so that more Vietnam vets can make that return and hopefully remove some of the demons that might still be in their minds. So it's just being with those vets and talking to them and watching them experience Vietnam on a positive level just had a great effect on me.
The Wheelchair Foundation has delivered over 33,000 wheelchairs domestically, and over 3,000 of those wheelchairs were given to victims of Hurricane Katrina, and many of the other wheelchairs were given to veterans at the VA hospitals and those that were members of Honor Flight. Though the main focus of the Wheelchair Foundation is abroad, the Wheelchair Foundation does make sure to provide a wheelchair for anybody who has a permanent disability and needs a wheelchair. We ship them by ocean container, and they are bought through China because it is the cheapest method in which we can purchase as many wheelchairs as possible for such a low price of $150. We purchase the wheelchairs through China, we put them in containers, we pack them on ocean crates, and then we ship them to the country that they will be delivered in. They have to go through customs, and then somebody will have to get those wheelchairs and then transport them to the final destination. I spread the message of the Wheelchair Foundation by posting as often as I can on social media, not only on my personal Facebook and Instagram, but also on my title holder pages as well. I also like to involve myself and the Wheelchair Foundation as a whole by going to different Rotary International clubs across the state of California, by hosting assemblies, hosting fundraisers, speaking to elementary, middle, and high school students, and also speaking to different Girl Scout and Boy Scout clubs of America. It was not easy. I made it my mission 3 years ago to go across the state of California and raise as much money as I could for the Wheelchair Foundation. And what I wanted to do was raise enough money so that I could be able to go back to Africa and make a full circle. And so I set my mind to it, and I started going to Rotary Club after Rotary Club, fundraiser after fundraiser, just getting the word out about the Wheelchair Foundation. And I will never forget going to the Danville Sycamore Rotary Club and being able to speak about my platform and trying to hold back as many tears as I could because I wanted to be as professional as possible. and explaining why I cared so much about the Wheelchair Foundation and what it has done for me as a woman. And I will never forget asking at the very end, you know, it's always awkward asking for money, but saying, you know, if this is something that you'd be interested in helping out with, a little goes a long way. You don't have to donate $150, but $150 does pay for one wheelchair. And I sat by the side, and all of a sudden hands kept shooting up, and a man stood up and he said, I am not only going to pledge $150, I am going to pledge $500 so that you can have several different wheelchairs. And after that, hands kept shooting up left and right, people pledging $100, $200, $1,000. And I'm getting emotional just thinking about it because I have never felt so warm in my heart before, to know that all of these people who came from all different walks of life, all different economic backgrounds, were so willing to help a cause that meant so much to me and meant so much to so many others. So I ended up raising $1,000 here, $2,000 there, and I kept giving the money to my dad after every Rotary Club and every fundraiser, and I got an email from my dad about a year ago, and he said, you have surpassed the $36,000 mark for a container of wheelchairs to Tanzania. And you not only surpassed that, you were at 46,000, oh, sorry. I don't know why I said 46. I'm hoping to get to 46. I am at $42,500 for a container for wheelchairs that I'm going to be delivering in Tanzania this summer with my family by my side. And a couple of those are going to be Kanga wheelchairs, which are a little bit more expensive, but they are meant for the kids that have muscular dystrophy problems. So they are going to be able to move on their own, and they are robotic, and they have different sets of tires. So I'm very excited to go back to Tanzania and to make a full circle trip, not only to be able to say that I raised the money for these wheelchairs, but I raised the money, put them towards something, put my mind towards something, and now I'm going to be able to deliver these wheelchairs in South Africa, the place that changed my life forever. And I get to do it with my brother, my grandpa, oh sorry, not my grandpa. I'm going to be able to do it with my grandmother, my dad, my brother, and my cousin Jessica. And it's going to be a trip of a lifetime, and I am ecstatic to be able to say that we are going to be going back. And after this, hopefully my next container of wheelchairs is going to be going towards disabled United States veterans. Thank you all so much for tuning in today, and I hope that you enjoyed this video on the Wheelchair Foundation Wheels That Heal. I hope you learned a little bit more about me, about why I care so much about my platform, about my father's position as the president, and about the Wheelchair Foundation's start. I am so sorry if there's a lot of bloopers in here, if there's a lot of awkward transitions, if I forgot numbers, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Click subscribe if you like it, thumbs up, and I can't wait to see you guys next time. Bye!